Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very excited to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. The crisp sound of clinking glasses echoed in the restaurant as Rachel's family raised their glasses to toast each other, with laughter spreading through the air. This was a grand family dinner celebrating Rachel's father's 65th birthday. Both sides of the long table were filled with Rachel's family, parents, sister, brother, and their spouses, and even several close family friends. But Mark, Rachel's husband, was arranged to sit at a small round table in the corner of the restaurant. It was the children's table specifically prepared for kids, surrounded by several children no older than 12. Mark's fingers tightly gripped his napkin, his knuckles turning white as he struggled to maintain outward calm. But the feeling of humiliation surged within him like a tide. "Uncle, why are you sitting here with us?" Rachel's sister's young son looked up and innocently asked. Mark forced a smile. "Maybe because there weren't enough seats." The child shook his head. "But there are empty seats at the adults' table. Mom said those are reserved for important people." Mark's gaze traveled across the restaurant to see Rachel chatting closely with a tall man he didn't recognize, occasionally bursting into cheerful laughter. That seat should have been his. Mark quietly stood up and walked to the coat room to retrieve his jacket. No one noticed his departure. No one except Rachel's mother at the end of the table, who met Mark's eyes, flashed a look of embarrassment, then quickly looked away as if she hadn't seen anything. Mark didn't say goodbye or draw attention. He simply closed the door quietly and walked into the cold night. He started his car and drove away from the place where he should have been respected. His phone rang 30 minutes later. It was Rachel calling. Mark let it continue ringing. Another call and another. Then came the text messages. "Where are you? What's wrong? How could you just leave like that?" Mark turned off his phone and continued driving. What happened tonight was merely the last straw in a long accumulation of issues. He should have seen it clearly earlier. Mark was a supervisor at a postal sorting center, responsible for ensuring tens of thousands of mail items were accurately delivered to their destinations each day. The job required precision and responsibility, which were Mark's strengths. At work, Mark was a reliable pillar, respected by his subordinates for his professionalism and fairness. Rachel ran a vintage postcard e-commerce business, specializing in selling landscape postcards with retro filters and nostalgic handwritten fonts. Her business had flourished in recent years, especially with the boost from social media marketing. They met at a friend's gathering 6 years ago, where Mark was attracted to Rachel's vitality and creativity, while Rachel appreciated Mark's steadiness and reliability. 3 years after marriage, their relationship gradually became mundane. Rachel became increasingly invested in her career, while Mark tried to maintain the family balance. Back home, Mark sat in darkness without turning on the lights, just thinking. Tonight's humiliation was only the surface, hiding deeper problems. Over the past few months, Rachel's behavior had become increasingly strange. Frequent business trips, late-night phone calls, and a phone password different from her old one. Mark rose and walked to the study, turning on his computer. He wasn't indifferent. On the contrary, he cared too much. That's why he started noticing those subtle changes. He opened a folder containing information he had collected recently. Unfamiliar hotel records on credit card statements, unexplainable gaps in Rachel's schedule, and recent clues from social media. The hotel records showed that on days when Rachel claimed to be visiting suppliers, she had stayed at a resort that emphasized romantic atmosphere. Photos showed it was a place focused on leisure experiences, far from the nature of a business trip. Mark had subtly inquired about this and received the answer. "The company booked the room. I don't know why they chose that place." Mark sank into an icy calmness, knowing what he needed to do next. He wasn't an impulsive person. He planned, observed, gathered evidence, and then took action. The next morning, Rachel returned home with an apologetic smile on her face. "I'm really sorry about last night," Rachel said straightforwardly. "My father invited some important business partners at the last minute, so the seating arrangement was a bit chaotic. I didn't expect you would just leave." Mark looked at her calmly. "Last-minute guests are more important than your husband?" Rachel waved dismissively, as if it were just a minor issue. "You know how my father values those who can help the family business. Don't take it so seriously, okay?" Mark didn't argue, just nodded. It wasn't time yet. "By the way," Rachel continued casually, I need to go to Denver for a trade show next week for about 5 days. Another business trip. Just the opportunity Mark needed. All right, I'll take care of things at home, Mark said, his voice unusually calm. After Rachel left, Mark opened his computer and began his investigation. First, he checked the information about the trade show Rachel mentioned. As he suspected, there was no trade show related to vintage postcards or related merchandise scheduled in Denver next week. This confirmed his suspicion. Next, Mark looked at the social media accounts of Rachel's company. In photos inadvertently tagged on Rachel's personal account, a man's figure appeared frequently. Through cross-referencing and searching, Mark confirmed this person's identity: Jason, a well-known travel magazine editor. His photos with Rachel always appeared under business meeting tags, but that intimate body language and eye contact were far from what should exist between ordinary business partners. Late at night, Mark received the decisive evidence. A friend of his, a hotel manager, sent a message confirming that Rachel and Jason had booked a double suite at a luxury resort near Yellowstone National Park for next week. This completely contradicted Rachel's Denver trade show story. The evidence was conclusive. Mark shut down his computer, feeling a strange calmness. Pain existed, of course, but more prominent was determination. He wouldn't play the role of a victim, nor would he beg or plead. He would let his actions speak. The night before Rachel's departure, they had dinner together, with an atmosphere superficially calm, as usual. "Don't forget to text me when you arrive safely," Mark said, just as he did every time Rachel went on a business trip. Rachel nodded, looking somewhat distracted, her eyes drifting to her phone. "Of course, the trade show will be busy, so I might not reply promptly." "I understand," Mark answered. After all, business activities are important. Rachel didn't seem to notice the double meaning in Mark's words, just smiled slightly. "Thanks for understanding." The next morning, Mark drove Rachel to the airport, gave her one last hug, then watched her go through security. Everything seemed normal, except this time, Mark knew she wasn't heading to Denver, but spending 5 days with Jason at Yellowstone National Park. Back home, Mark began executing his plan. First, he contacted a divorce lawyer and scheduled a consultation for that afternoon. Then, he organized all the evidence he had collected: photos, itinerary records, hotel bookings, credit card statements, inconsistent business trip records. The lawyer reviewed the evidence and nodded. "These are sufficient to prove infidelity. Given the circumstances, what outcome are you seeking?" "A clean break," Mark answered. "I don't want any dragging on. As for property division, I have an idea." Mark explained his plan. Over the past few months, he had not only collected evidence of Rachel's affair, but also noticed some issues with her company's operations. Rachel's company had recently started selling so-called eco-friendly postcards, claiming they used special environmentally friendly materials and ink that could purify water they came into contact with. This was an attractive marketing gimmick that brought Rachel considerable sales growth. "The problem is," Mark explained, "I have reason to believe this purported water purification function is completely fabricated. Her company has no relevant test reports or scientific evidence to support this claim." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "How do you plan to prove this?" "I work at the post office," Mark said. "We have access to basic data from the municipal water supply system to ensure safety during mail processing. I plan to compare this data with the water purification effects claimed by Rachel's company. If I can prove her advertising is false, that would constitute a serious violation of advertising law." "Interesting direction," the lawyer mused. "But be careful to ensure your evidence collection methods are completely legal." "Of course," Mark assured him. "I will follow all appropriate procedures." Over the next few days, Mark acted quickly but cautiously. He applied for relevant water quality test reports through legal channels while purchasing Rachel's company's eco-friendly postcards and sending them to an independent laboratory for component analysis. Meanwhile, he discovered that Jason was not only Rachel's lover, but also had close business ties with her company. Jason's travel magazine had become one of the main distribution channels for Rachel's company products, especially those so-called eco-friendly postcards. Jason used his influence in the tourism industry to persuade many tourist attraction shops to become distributors for Rachel's products. The day before Rachel's return, Mark received the analysis report from the laboratory. The results were as he expected. Rachel's company's eco-friendly postcards, not only had no water purification function, but some of the chemical dyes used might even release harmful substances under certain conditions. This completely contradicted the company's advertising claims, constituting serious false advertising. Mark organized all the evidence and quietly awaited Rachel's return. When Rachel returned home, her face radiated happiness, obviously having had a fulfilling vacation. "How was the trade show?" Mark asked, with slight sarcasm in his voice. "Very successful," Rachel casually answered while checking messages on her phone. "Met many new clients." "Interesting," Mark said, "because according to my understanding, there was no trade show related to your industry in Denver last week." Rachel's fingers stopped on her phone screen, her eyes slowly rising. "What do you mean?" "I know you were with Jason," Mark said calmly, "at Yellowstone National Park, not in Denver." Rachel's face instantly turned pale, then quickly regained composure. "You've been spying on me?" "No need for spying," Mark replied. "Deception always leaves traces. I just cared enough to notice those traces." Rachel's attitude quickly shifted from surprise to defense. "So what? Our marriage has been in name only for a long time. You're always busy with work, never caring about my feelings and needs." "Really?" Mark coolly retorted. "Was I the one who arranged for you to sit at the children's table, humiliating you in front of the whole family? Was I the one deceiving you behind your back, lying again and again?" Rachel was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Fine. Yes, I have a relationship with Jason. He understands me, supports me. He's passionate about my career, not like you, who only knows how to bury yourself in boring mail." "So that's your reason for betrayal?" Mark asked, his voice full of controlled anger. "Because my job isn't glamorous enough?" "It's not just that," Rachel defended. "Jason is my soulmate. He's the kind of person who truly understands my creativity and aspirations." Mark shook his head. "No, Rachel, you've just been deceived by his facade. Do you know how many soulmates Jason has?" Mark took out his phone, showing several photos of Jason intimately posing with different women, all with business cooperation backgrounds. "Jason uses the same tricks on every woman who can bring him business benefits," Mark explained. "You're not special, just currently useful to him." Rachel's expression changed from defensive to shocked, then angry. "You have no right to judge our relationship. You don't understand the connection between us." "Maybe," Mark admitted, "but what I do understand is that you two have not only deceived me emotionally, but also deceived the public commercially." Mark took out another folder containing the laboratory analysis report and comparison with municipal water quality data. "Your so-called eco-friendly postcards are a complete scam," Mark said. "They not only lack any water purification function, but may also release harmful substances. And Jason helped you promote this scam to tourist attractions nationwide." Rachel's face grew even paler. "That's impossible," the supplier assured me. "But you never verified it, did you?" Mark questioned. "You were too eager to pursue profit and fame to bother with basic product safety testing." Rachel collapsed onto the sofa, finally realizing the seriousness of the situation. "What are you going to do?" "Divorce," Mark answered simply and clearly. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. As for your company and your creative collaboration with Jason, I've submitted reports to relevant regulatory authorities." Rachel looked up sharply. "You can't do that. It will ruin everything for me." "No, Rachel," Mark shook his head. "You ruined everything yourself from the moment you decided to betray me. Now, you're just facing the consequences of your choices." That night, Rachel tried to contact Jason, but he suddenly became difficult to reach. Mark's words echoed in her mind. Was she just one of Jason's many business partners? Mark was organizing his luggage in the study. Tomorrow, he would move out of this house full of lies and start a new life. He wouldn't dwell in pain and betrayal, but chose to maintain his dignity through action. Just as Mark was about to close his suitcase, the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find Rachel's parents standing outside with serious expressions. "We need to talk," Rachel's father said. Mark let them in but was clear about his stance. "If you're here to defend Rachel, don't waste your time." To Mark's surprise, Rachel's father shook his head. "No, we're not here to defend her. We're here to apologize for the disrespect shown to you at that dinner." Rachel's mother continued. "We noticed something unusual between Rachel and that editor at the time, but we chose to remain silent. That wasn't fair to you. Mark listened quietly, his anger subsiding a little. At least someone was willing to acknowledge their mistake. "Thank you for your honesty," Mark finally said. "But this doesn't change anything. My marriage to Rachel is over." Rachel's father nodded, his eyes showing understanding and respect. "I understand. I just want you to know that whatever happens, you will always be part of our family." As they left, Mark felt a sense of relief. In all this chaos, at least someone remembered what respect and honesty meant. Late at night, Mark lay on the guest room bed, thinking about the new beginning awaiting him tomorrow. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew one thing. Wherever he went, he would never again allow anyone to trample his dignity, whether at the dinner table or anywhere else in life. A week later, Mark moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city. The apartment wasn't large, but it was clean and bright, and most importantly, there were no shadows of lies and betrayal here. Outside the window was the city skyline, and every morning, sunlight would be the first to shine into this brand new space, marking a new beginning. The divorce proceedings were officially initiated, with Mark's lawyer being highly efficient. Based on the collected evidence, Mark was likely to obtain favorable property division terms. But Mark didn't care about these material victories. He was more concerned with how to make those deceptions and falsehoods pay the price. Meanwhile, Rachel's world was rapidly collapsing. The regulatory authorities' investigation into her company had begun, with initial results confirming Mark's findings. The so-called eco-friendly postcards indeed had no water purification function, and the advertising was completely fabricated. Worse still, further laboratory testing discovered that under certain conditions, the special coating used on the postcards might release harmful substances, especially when in contact with water. Rachel tried to contact Jason for support, but he seemed to have realized the risk and began deliberately distancing himself from her. Rachel's calls often went unanswered, and text messages received perfunctory replies. All this confirmed Mark's prediction. To Jason, Rachel was just one of many business partners, immediately abandoned once no longer profitable or potentially troublesome. Mark's work at the post office continued as usual. Although colleagues knew he was going through a divorce, Mark maintained a professional attitude, not letting personal problems affect his work. In fact, immersing himself in work gave him a sense of calm and order, especially precious during chaotic personal times. One afternoon, Mark's office phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Mark," he answered routinely. "Mr. Mark, this is Thomas from Jackson Law Firm." The caller introduced himself. "I represent several consumers who purchased Rachel's company's eco-friendly postcards. We understand you may have some relevant information." Mark wasn't surprised to receive such a call. As the investigation deepened, more and more consumers began to realize they had been deceived, especially those who specifically purchased so-called eco-products to support environmental causes. "I'm willing to provide everything I know," Mark replied, "but I need to ensure everything goes through proper channels." "Of course," Thomas answered. "We can arrange a formal meeting with my assistant present to record." When the appointed date arrived, Mark brought all the evidence and analysis reports he had collected. The meeting lasted 3 hours, with Mark explaining in detail how he discovered the problem and the contradictions between municipal water quality data and product claims. "This information is very valuable," Thomas concluded. "We now have enough evidence to file a class action lawsuit against Rachel's company. The estimated damages due to false advertising could amount to millions of dollars." Mark nodded. "I just want the truth to come out and for consumers to receive proper compensation." Thomas looked at Mark thoughtfully. "You know, Mr. Mark, we're looking for an expert witness who can explain this technical data. Given your expertise and understanding of the case, would you be willing to take on this role?" After some thought, Mark agreed. This wasn't about revenge, but justice. News quickly spread, attracting widespread media attention. The eco-friendly postcard scam became a local news headline, and Rachel's company faced an unprecedented crisis. Investors began withdrawing, distributors terminated partnerships, and customers demanded refunds. Within just a few weeks, Rachel's once thriving business was on the brink of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Jason didn't escape unscathed. As the main distribution channel, Jason's travel magazine also faced consumer questioning and anger. Worse still, Reports indicated that Jason's son had developed health issues after contact with these so-called eco-friendly postcards. Apparently, the child had soaked these postcards in water to personally witness the miraculous water purification effect described in the advertising, resulting in mild poisoning. This news quickly spread on social media, raising greater public concerns about product safety. Regulatory authorities had to expand the scope of their investigation to examine all of Rachel's company's product lines. One evening, as Mark was organizing his new apartment, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, Mark was surprised to see Rachel standing outside, looking haggard, with red, swollen eyes, clearly having experienced many sleepless nights. "May I come in?" Rachel asked softly. Mark hesitated, then stepped aside. "What's the matter?" Rachel sat on the edge of the sofa, hands tightly clasped. "My company is finished. The regulatory authorities have ordered a recall of all products, and the court has frozen accounts for compensation. I have nothing left." Mark didn't feel the expected satisfaction, just a calm acceptance. "These are the consequences of your own choices." "I know," Rachel admitted, her voice choked. "But I never thought I would harm anyone, especially children. I just believed the supplier's promises without conducting proper testing." "What about Jason?" Mark asked. "Is your soulmate standing by you in this moment?" Rachel gave a bitter laugh. "Jason has completely disappeared. Since his son developed health issues, he's pushed all responsibility onto me. He's telling everyone he's just another victim deceived by me." Mark shook his head, no longer surprised. "So, why have you come to me now? For sympathy? Forgiveness?" "I don't know," Rachel answered honestly. "Maybe just to tell you in person that you were right. About Jason, about my company, about everything. I messed up." Mark looked at his former wife, whose breakdown didn't bring him the expected sense of victory. Instead, he felt a calm relief, a lightness from finally being able to let go. "I don't hate you, Rachel," Mark finally said, "but I won't forgive you either. Some things, once done, cannot be undone. We both need to move forward." Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." She stood up to leave, pausing at the door. "By the way, my parents asked me to tell you they miss you. They said that no matter what happens, you'll always be part of the family." Mark didn't respond. After Rachel left, Mark sat by the window, watching the city lights. He wouldn't be bound by the past or let pain define his future. Tomorrow was a new day, with new possibilities waiting for him. Several months later, the class action lawsuit reached a settlement. Rachel's company was forced to pay huge compensation, far exceeding what it could bear, and ultimately declared bankruptcy. Rachel had to sell personal assets to pay the remaining compensation, including her prized mansion and luxury cars. Now, she had moved back to her parents' home and maintained a living by working as a basic clerk in a small printing factory. Jason's situation wasn't optimistic either. The travel magazine revoked his editor position to avoid association with the scandal. More worryingly, his son's health issues continued, requiring regular medical monitoring. Doctors stated that while the child's symptoms had stabilized, they couldn't rule out potential long-term effects. Meanwhile, Mark's life was developing in unexpected directions. Through his experience as an expert witness, he discovered his talent in product safety testing and quality control. Encouraged by several lawyers and investors, Mark created an independent product testing institution, specifically providing transparent, reliable safety assessments for businesses. This newly established institution quickly gained market recognition. Many businesses, especially those claiming special environmentally friendly functions for their products, sought Mark's services to ensure their products met advertising claims and safety standards. Mark's expertise and integrity earned him respect within the industry. As the company grew, Mark needed more talent to join his team. He recruited several experts with backgrounds in chemistry and environmental science, while also establishing a well-equipped laboratory with state-of-the-art testing equipment. One of the newly recruited employees, Sarah, a PhD in environmental chemistry, was particularly interested in Mark's story. "I must admit," Sarah said to Mark during lunch one day, "your experience is quite unique. Most people become cynical after experiencing betrayal, but you found a positive way to respond to it." Mark smiled. "I didn't want that experience to define me. Instead, I chose to let it become a turning point." As time passed, Mark and Sarah's relationship gradually extended beyond colleagues. They began sharing more personal time, attending industry seminars together, and occasionally dining together. Sarah was intelligent, passionate, and straightforward, forming a stark contrast to Rachel. Most importantly, her respect for Mark was genuine, without any hidden agenda. On the first anniversary of the company's founding, Mark decided to host a small celebration, inviting employees, clients, and some industry partners. On the day of the event, an unexpected visitor appeared at the door, Rachel's father. "I hope I'm not intruding," the old man said softly. "I just wanted to come and congratulate you." Mark welcomed him and showed him around the company's facilities and laboratory. Rachel's father was impressed by everything Mark had built. "You know, Mark," the old man said before leaving, "Rachel is still trying to rebuild her life. She's now studying environmental science at community college, trying to truly understand those environmental principles she once casually promoted." Mark nodded but didn't show particular interest. For him, Rachel's life was no longer his concern. Also, Rachel's father continued, "I heard Jason's son's condition has become more complicated. Doctors discovered that those chemicals might have caused long-term damage to his liver." This information did catch Mark's attention. An innocent child being harmed was not something he wished to see. "I'll have my team look into the situation," Mark said. "Perhaps we can offer some help, understanding exactly which substances are causing the problem, so doctors can better treat him." Rachel's father gratefully shook Mark's hand. "You've always been a good man, Mark, even after all this." A few weeks later, Mark's company received a special consultation request. An international environmental organization was seeking partners to help them evaluate various products on the market claiming to have environmentally friendly functions. This was an important opportunity, not only enhancing the company's reputation, but also truly contributing to environmental causes. Mark met with the organization's representative, Olivia. Olivia, a veteran expert focused on environmental fields for many years, expressed great interest in both Mark's story and professional capabilities. "Your experience is very unique," Olivia commented, "finding a way to serve society through personal adversity. This is exactly the perspective we need." After the meeting, Olivia invited Mark to dinner to continue discussing collaboration details. The two got along well, discovering they had much in common. This wasn't the beginning of romance, but a sincere friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. As the collaboration deepened, Mark's company began providing consumers with an online database to query the true environmental ratings of various products. This project quickly attracted media attention, and Mark was invited to participate in several TV programs and podcasts to share his expertise and personal story. In a television interview, the host asked, "Mark, what was your initial motivation for creating this company?" Mark thought for a moment, then answered, "Honestly, the initial motivation was personal. I wanted to expose a lie that deceived me and the public. But as time went on, I realized this issue far exceeded the personal level. Consumers face false environmental claims every day without reliable resources to verify these statements. I wanted to fill that gap." This answer won enthusiastic response from the audience, and Mark's company rapidly gained fame. More businesses began proactively submitting products for testing, hoping to receive their certification proving their environmental claims were genuine. Meanwhile, Sarah's role in the company became increasingly important. Her expertise and passion brought new vitality to the team. Mark found himself increasingly relying on her opinions, not just on professional issues, but also in personal decisions. One night, after working overtime together to complete an important project, Sarah suddenly asked, "Have you really completely let go of Rachel?" Mark was startled by this question, but answered thoughtfully, "Yes, I think so. Not that I've forgotten everything that happened, but those memories no longer bring pain. They're just part of my life journey." Sarah smiled slightly. "That's good, because I'm really starting to like you, but I don't want to just be some kind of healing tool." Mark returned the smile. "You're definitely not that kind of presence. You're a completely new beginning, a gift I never thought I'd encounter." As the company continued to develop, Mark constantly received requests and consultations from across the country. One request particularly caught his attention. A small community college environmental science program needed professional guidance. This would have been just one of many consultation requests until Mark saw the contact name, Rachel. Back in his office, Mark sat down, considering how to respond. He could easily transfer this request to someone else on the team, avoiding any direct contact. But after careful consideration, he decided to reply personally. "Dear Ms. Rachel," Mark wrote in the email, "thank you for your inquiry. While I cannot personally be directly involved in your project, I will arrange for our Deputy Director Sarah to contact you and provide the necessary support. I wish you success with your studies and project." Simple, professional, without personal emotion. Mark clicked send, then closed his computer. He had moved forward many steps. There was no need to look back. A few weeks later, at an industry conference, Mark accidentally encountered Jason. The two met in the coffee area, creating a momentarily awkward atmosphere. "Mark," Jason spoke first, his voice low, "you probably don't want to talk to me, but I still want to say I'm sorry. Not just for me and Rachel, but also for my role in the entire eco-friendly postcard scam." Mark looked at him calmly. "How is your son doing?" Jason's expression darkened. "Not good. Doctors say he might need lifelong monitoring of liver function. It's something I'll never forgive myself for." Mark nodded. "Our company is researching the components of that special coating, hoping to find more effective treatment methods. Once there's progress, I'll ensure the information reaches you and the medical team." Jason looked somewhat surprised. "Thank you, Mark. I don't know what to say." "No need to say anything," Mark replied. "This isn't for you, but for your son. He's innocent." After the conference, Mark took the elevator back to his hotel room. Just as he was about to reach his floor, the elevator stopped, and Rachel walked in. Both were stunned. "Mark," Rachel said softly, obviously surprised by this chance encounter. Mark nodded in acknowledgement. "Rachel." The air in the elevator seemed to freeze. Rachel looked like she wanted to say something, but ultimately remained silent. When the elevator reached Mark's floor, he walked out without looking back. Some encounters are just coincidences of fate, requiring no special meaning. Back in his hotel room, Mark received a message from Sarah. "How's the conference going? Missing your advice. Everything at the company is fine." Mark smiled and replied, "Good. Coming back tomorrow with lots of new ideas to share. Miss you too." Putting down his phone, Mark walked to the window, looking at the city's night scene. 6 years ago, at that friends gathering, he met Rachel, was attracted by her vitality, and believed they would spend a lifetime together. Now, that dream had shattered, but from the ruins, he had built something more meaningful: a career helping others, a new relationship based on true respect, and a profound understanding of his own worth. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns, but it's these turns that define our character and destiny. For Mark, that humiliation of being seated at the children's table became a turning point in his life. Not because of the humiliation itself, but because it revealed hidden truths and prompted him to take action, regaining control of his own destiny. 6 months later, Mark's company received important recognition in the industry, being named Most Influential Environmental Initiative of the Year. At the awards banquet, Mark invited Sarah as his partner. As they walked the red carpet together, several reporters recognized him. "Mr. Mark," one reporter asked, "what does this journey from a personal crisis to creating such a successful enterprise mean to you?" Mark looked at Sarah beside him, then answered, "It taught me that sometimes the things we fear most, betrayal, failure, complete change, are precisely the catalysts that lead us to find our true mission. Life isn't about avoiding falls, but about how we get up after falling and create something better." After the awards ceremony, Mark and Sarah strolled in the garden outside the banquet hall. The night was gentle, the stars brilliant. "You know," Sarah said, "when I first heard your story, I thought you would be the kind of person filled with anger and bitterness. But you're quite the opposite." Mark smiled, looking at the night sky. "I was angry and bitter once. But I realized those emotions only bind oneself, not hurt those who betrayed you. True freedom comes from letting go, not forgetting, but no longer allowing it to control your life." Sarah held his hand. "That's a profound wisdom. Earned through experience," Mark answered softly, "but I don't regret it." At this moment, standing under the starry sky with someone who truly respected and cared for him, Mark felt an unprecedented peace and satisfaction. His life had come full circle, from the humiliation of being seated at the children's table to now being a respected industry leader. This isn't a story about forgiveness, but about growth and rebirth. Some betrayals are too deep to truly forgive, some wounds too heavy to fully heal. But life continues, and Mark chose to move forward positively, not being defined by the past, but creating a better future with lessons from the past. As the night deepened and Mark and Sarah prepared to leave, a waiter ran over, handing Mark a small envelope. "Someone asked me to give this to you, sir," the waiter said. Mark opened the envelope to find a small card that read, "Congratulations on your well-deserved success. We are proud of you. Rachel's parents." Mark tucked the card into his pocket, feeling a touch of warmth. Even after everything that had happened, someone still remembered that true connections don't easily break. "Is everything all right?" Sarah asked with concern. Mark nodded with a smile. "Everything is fine. Come on, it's time to go home." They left the garden, walking toward the future, not a perfect future, but a real one full of possibilities. Because ultimately, life's true victory isn't about avoiding pain, but being reborn from pain, not about never being betrayed, but not letting betrayal define who you are. And Mark, the man once seated at the children's table, had now found his place, not a seat assigned by others, but a position he had won through courage and determination. This is a dignity that no one can take away. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. Looking forward to seeing you in our next story.